Hello and welcome to this episode of the Political Debrief Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. The Green Party has been in the news a lot recently. They just elected a new leader, Elizabeth May, and her running mate, Jonathan Pedneault, who is now the deputy leader of the Green Party. However, the Green Party has also been in the news a lot recently for some more not so happy reasons. There was a lot of turmoil in the party during and after the leadership of the last leader of the Green Party, Annamie Paul. And to talk about how the party is planning to recover from this and how the party is going to reach out to Canada's youth, I am joined by Jonathan Pedneault, who ran with Elizabeth May for the leadership of the Green Party and now serves as the deputy leader. Talk about a bunch of topics, including his young start to politics and how co-leadership works and how the party can connect with young people about the issues today. Here's our conversation now. And joining me now is Jonathan Pedneault. Jonathan ran with Elizabeth May for the co-leadership of the Green Party. And in an official role, Jonathan serves as the deputy leader of the Green Party. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, so there might be a lot of people that in Canada that don't know who you are and don't know your story. So do you want to take a couple minutes to kind of introduce yourself to Canada?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I'm a 32-year-old guy from Montreal, from the South Shore of Montreal. Actually, my family comes from northern Quebec, a place called Lac-Saint-Jean. My father is Cuban-American. My mother is French-Canadian. Did study political science, but that's one thing maybe not that many people know, but I actually I studied political science at the University of Ottawa, but very quickly dropped out. And the reason for that is because when I was 17, I managed to get CBC to send me and another colleague, a bit older and more experienced, to document the situation in Darfur. And if you'll remember, Darfur back in 2007 was in the middle of a civil war, civil conflict, extremely abusive, which was also linked to climate. And when I returned to Canada after having crossed an international border from Chad into Sudan in the middle of the night with Sudanese rebels, I just didn't fit so much in the classroom anymore, and I wanted to continue to get out there and learn about the world by reporting on it. And so very quickly I went back, documented the situation in Somalia, in Egypt, and Libya during the Arab Spring, and quickly enough I became a journalist trainer in South Sudan, the Central African Republic, and that morphed into human rights reporting with Amnesty International and then with Human Rights Watch for the past 6 years. In that capacity, I reported on the human rights violations and violations of the laws of wars, or war crimes, basically in numerous countries like Afghanistan or more recently Ukraine. And now I'm back in Canada because this country's given me so much, and I want to give back. But I want to give back with a party that truly represents my values and where I think the world sits at this crucial moment. We are faced with a climate emergency that will define our lifetime. And I think for me, it's very clear that the Greens are the only ones that have consistently been raising the alarm bell and are the only ones that have consistently been talking in a truthful manner to Canadians, and I want to be part of that effort.
So you were involved with politics and kind of the world at a very young age. When you were 15, you created the Genocide Prevention Society, which was a student organization which raised awareness about events like the Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide, and the Darfur crisis. What obstacles did you face when dealing with these huge issues at such a young age, and how did you overcome those?
Oh, for sure. I think the first reaction from a lot of adults was like, who are you, and why do you think you can take up such big issues in such a way? And I think I was fortunate enough to have very good teachers in high school who believed in me and who gave me space to grow, learn, and also communicate to other students. And that's how me and other students came up with the idea of this Genocide Prevention Society, which was, admittedly slightly ambitious, but we were writing letters to our MP. We were, I got to go to Paris to meet with the former UN Secretary General Boutros Boutros-Ghali, who passed away a couple of years ago, because we were hoping to revise or renew the Genocide Convention of 1948 to make it clearer that states have that states have an obligation, in fact, to intervene to stop genocide and violence. Um, but that's not something that happens every day. I think very often there's a tendency on the part of adults to see younger, teenagers and kids, and think that they can't achieve such kinds of big things, right? It's too big. But in my experience, at least, um, and partly because I was supported by very good teachers, if one starts and puts together a project, a proposal, uh, more often than not, you'll find allies. But it may take time. I was sending, I remember I would come back from school and then do my homework, and then, for hours on end, probably until 8 p.m., until bedtime, basically, I was writing these emails to UN diplomats and, Canadian politicians, and just trying to reach out to them and say, hey, we've got this project going on and we'd like to reform the UN Genocide Convention. Would you be interested in supporting us? And I got in touch with former Foreign Affairs Minister of Canada, Lloyd Experty, who wrote back favorably. I found an email address for Archbishop Desmond Tutu at the time. His assistant wrote back, and he was supportive as well. I got to meet with Chris Reddy, as I mentioned. So if you're persistent enough and if you're organized enough, then gosh, you've got a world of opportunities out there to make a difference in your community and in the world. And I think it's so crucial that young people bring their own perspective to old problems in the world, because more often than not, when it comes to people my age, we become a bit jaded and start to follow in the tracks of what has been done before. Whereas sometimes what we need is truly radical solutions and proposals, and these oftentimes come from young people.
So fast forward a little bit to earlier this year. There's a lot of speculation as to who's gonna become the new leader of the Green Party, and the leadership race was interesting, I think, in a couple of ways, because it was really the first example of a co-leader or a co-leadership contestant model. So first of all, can you just briefly explain what co-leadership is and kind of what drew you to that model?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because at the federal level, co-leadership is an entirely new thing. But where I come from in Quebec, we've had a political party at the provincial level that's been doing very well on a co-leadership model for several years. They're called Québec Solidaire. The basic idea is to say, look, we have to get rid of the notion that complex issues and complex problems can be fixed by one single person. And the reality is that in a parliamentary democracy, people do not vote for who their prime minister is going to be. People vote for who their member of parliament, their representative, will be. And so I think revisiting the notion of leadership in this country is crucial, and co-leadership is one step in that direction. It's something that Quebec Solidaire is already doing and doing quite well, but it's also something that exists in green parties throughout the world, notably in Germany, New Zealand, and a few other countries where we actually have green MPs or green members of parliament sitting in government. So the idea was floated initially by a few people a couple of years ago in the Green Party of Canada, but was not really implemented. And now, in the context of this leadership race, we had 6 candidates, and 4 of them decided to run on co-leadership tickets. So Elizabeth May and I, as well as Chad Walcott and Anna Keenan, and all of us came up at the top of the list of the choices when it came to the final results. So clearly, there is an appetite on the part of Green Party members for this sort of co-leadership model, which we hope can be innovative but also productive for the future of our party and the future of the country.
I'm curious to know how you and Elizabeth May got connected, because you two have some really different stories, and you two have done some really different things. So what connected you two together?
It's interesting because our backgrounds are not so dissimilar. Elizabeth, when she was very young, was also extremely active as a she was an activist against the spraying of Agent Orange. Her entire family is made up of activists, right? Her mother took Elizabeth in protest in Chicago. I think she was maced the first time when she was 14 or something. So we have a similar background of sort of early on advocacy and activism. Now, of course, Elizabeth's activism has mostly been focused around environmental issues. Mine has been around human rights issues. And we met for the first time, in fact, this spring. Until the month of May, I was living in Norway as part of my former job with Human Rights Watch. And as part of that job, I was not allowed or able to be politically involved in any political party, so to speak. So I had to keep a bit of a distance between me and political parties. But when I came back to Canada, I very quickly got connected with Elizabeth through a mutual friend of ours. We met in Ottawa for the first time, and at that moment, I was considering a potential leadership bid, but I wasn't too sure if I would go for it or not. Elizabeth had not made her intentions clear at all at that time. But we had a productive chat, and then a couple of weeks later, she, we kept in touch. We exchanged a few emails, but a couple of weeks later, she called me and she was like, "Well, Jonathan, I haven't been completely honest with you. I have to say that I had been considering to run for leadership, and I would like to run with you. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Okay, interesting proposal. Can we discuss that a bit more?" It seems, it sort of blindsided me. So I traveled to BC, to Vancouver Island, and we spent a week together when, we discussed all the pros and cons, our own views on various policy matters. And we also discussed how we would fix any conflicts between us, how we would work together if we were so lucky as to be elected. And we decided that we should make a go for it. And so that's the proposal that we made to members, and members accepted it on November 19th.
So you've never held, an elected public office, in the capacity that we're talking about with, a federal party or that kind of thing. Assuming that you are planning to run in the next federal election, which you haven't said anything, but I'm assuming you are. Why is now the time for you to switch from journalism to politics?
I'd say the shift is mostly from activism to politics, because most of my work with Human Rights Watch was also one where I was not only reporting but also being an advocate. Right, part of my job was to go to places like Cameroon or Afghanistan, report on human rights violations, and then take those reports, those recommendations back to places like the UN in Geneva or the UN in New York. The Foreign Affairs Ministry in Paris or in London or in Washington, D.C. And then I would meet with these diplomats who were also, wearing these fine suits and, having their little coffees. And I was arriving with my boots still, full of mud from some refugee camp in South Sudan. And I would try and tell them, look, there's an emergency there. We need to do something. And every time, we'd have very nice discussions with these very nice diplomats or politicians. But at the end of the day, very little happened because there was very little political will to make anything happen. And so I thought, well, now is the time, at a time when we've got the Ukraine conflict, the conflict between the unlawful invasion of Ukraine by Russia. We have an extremely divided international community.
The Green Party has kind of unofficially been known as, the party of the young people or the young people's party. Are young people, still, do you think, a core part of the party? Do you want young people to be a core part of the party or continue to be a core part of the party? And how do you make that happen?
Say that the Green Party right now is not the party of young people. And that's a problem that we need to fix and that I need to fix. And that's a problem that I'm hoping to fix with other young people. And so I'm very much encouraging, young people who believe in the necessity of a Canada that stands true to its responsibilities to address the climate emergency, to protect communities, to transition our economy in a more fair, to build a more fair community and society here at home. I encourage all young people to join us and be a part of that effort. But the truth is, until recently, I mean, our membership is aging. There's still, most of our members are still very much committed to the green ideas. But the reality, I think, in today's politics is that a lot of young people are quite cynical towards politics. And I understand that because, so often people, you have these fresh figures that come into politics, whether it's Barack Obama a couple of years ago or Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh, and they come in fresh, full of promises, full of new ideas. And once they get into power or elected into office, people they support now as co-leader of the Green Party of Canada will try and be to combat that a little bit and sort of highlight the fact that it is still possible. And I've seen it in so many places in Ottawa where MPs Elizabeth Mike and Mike Morris have been doing an immense difference for people in this country. And I think we need to get engaged in politics. If we feel that politics is cynical and not leading to anything concrete and good, then we need to engage into it to make it change. Otherwise, of course, it won't change at all.
The Green Party has always been known for, it's been known as a one-issue party to many Canadians. If one looks at your platform, they might draw a different conclusion. But how do you think that a party like the Green Party that, is still very focused on climate change and is, kind of centered around climate change and protecting the environment. Do you think that there's a place for the Green Party still in Canada's political landscape, given that, most of all of the federal parties in last year's election talked about the environment and had, some kind of a plan for that?
It's super interesting because, when you say all of the other political parties, I guess we're mostly talking about the Liberals and the Conservatives. The NDP, well, they haven't really been in power, but, the Liberals and the Conservatives, they had platforms in the environment. And where do we stand right now? We stand at a situation where the Liberal government approved new oil exploration projects right after COP27, which was happening earlier last month. We have a government that approved a new oil drilling out the coast of Newfoundland right after the UN Secretary General said that further expansions of fossil fuel projects was economic madness and moral madness. So the reality is that none of the other parties have a comprehensive climate plan that they're willing to implement. It's one thing to talk about it; it's another to actually implement it. And what we've seen so far, both with the Liberals and the Conservatives, is that they're just dropping the ball every time. Now, I want to say, on the one issue part of the question, I want to say that for us as Greens, environment is at the heart of everything, but it is not everything. It's important to understand that without a healthy environment, there is no good education, there is no good healthcare, and there is no viable economy. The environment is at the heart of everything. If we have a dying planet, then we have a dying civilization, and it's pointless to talk about health or the economy. First and foremost, we need to ensure the basis, our habitat as a species, as the human species, and that habitat is right now under severe threats because of our actions. And so it's high time that we modify how we look at nature, that we understand that we are a part of it, and that we start acting seriously to protect it in order to maintain so many of the amazing achievements that we've been able to build collectively as humanity.
So then, I guess building on to that, what would you say is the most significant issue for younger Canadians right now?
I think a lot of young Canadians are struggling with the deep feeling of anxiety when they think about their future. Right? There's a war in Ukraine. There's rising inflation. There's a feeling that the world as we come to know it is about to crumble, and I have to say that honestly, things do look quite dire. But there is a way out of this, and the way out of this is exactly what we've seen throughout, right before the pandemic and to some extent during the pandemic with young people and their parents and their grandparents mobilizing, send a very clear signal to politicians that action is needed, that we're done with the blah, blah, blah. We're done with the empty promises. Real concrete climate action is necessary if we are to have a livable future. So, I think really to anyone who's watching your show who feels a bit disempowered or who feel like they might not, the world is turning into an ugly, threatening beast that they would want to escape, I want to tell you, fight, because it's worth it, because we can make it, and because we have a chance to create a more viable future, not only for ourselves, but for everyone else who's going to come after us. But that requires us to lift our eyes towards the future and fight.
If you had to go back to when you were 13, 14, 15, around that age, what is one thing, it could be anything, what is one thing that you wish you knew when you were that age? And then additionally, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to Canada's youth?
One thing I wish I had known is, that's a good question. One thing I wish I had known is probably the fact that things can be quite difficult for a while, but they will turn out to be better. I had some times in my life, in my youth, when I took decisions, and honestly, they landed me into economic trouble. I was jobless for a long time. I didn't have my own diploma, so it took a while before I was able to find jobs or opportunities. But in the end, I was able to. And so I think maintaining that faith that things will turn out for the better is so crucial, so important. And I would encourage young people to really remember that your own destiny is yours to craft. You have the tools. In a country like ours, you have so many resources, so many people that you can reach out to. Not only if you don't feel well with yourself or with the people in the society with whom you are, but also to change that society, to contribute actively to creating a better world. And so I very much want to encourage young people to engage, find out groups, find out political parties, educate yourself to understand how our system works, and get in there and create that difference.
And my last question for you today, Jonathan Pedneault, what is the best way for young people across Canada to get involved in, our democratic process or to have their voice heard?
And once again, I'd say, young youth participation is crucial. Try and find information where it is to be found. Look at the political platforms. See what fits best with your own interests, with your own values. I'm with the Greens, so traditionally, I guess I should say, come with us, come with the Greens. But I think it's important. We have a wide diversity of political parties in this country. We believe in democracy, and not everyone's going to see eye to eye on every issue. So I think it's important, first and foremost, to look at the options and then decide what is best for you, and then sign up for a membership. It may sound a bit antiquated, but actually, when you sign up for a membership, then that gives you an opportunity to also influence the policy process within a party, to come up with new ideas, new policies. That in many ways, in many political parties, the proposal for same-sex marriage, for example, or for the decriminalization of marijuana, or so many of the things that then eventually became actual policies, they started up within the young wings of these political parties. So getting involved in political parties, in my opinion, the best way is really get a membership, get involved, sign up, and as to us, as to the Greens, we'll be so very happy to have you.
Awesome, Jonathan Pedneault. Thank you so much for taking the time out of a very busy time for you right now.
Yeah, thank you. I'd be very happy to be back on the show later on, one at a time. But now it is a bit busy here.
And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Political Debrief. I hope you enjoyed it. There are some links down below for you to connect with the show. There's a blog post with some additional information about Jonathan and the story of the Green Party for the last little bit. I'd encourage you to check those out if you're interested. Also, please consider subscribing on YouTube and on your favorite podcast platform to get alerts and automatic downloads on podcasts whenever we post a new episode. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Oliverio and the show on Instagram at Political Debrief Show. Thank you so much once again for listening to this episode of Political Debrief. Hope to see you soon.